Okay, good evening, Rabbi Yisai, Shalom Aleichem. We're continuing in Daf Hashavua, Masechta Nedarim. Tonight's daf is Daf Yud Beis Amar Aleph. By the way, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the Eon Shir of Zachrinu Lichayim, where Makbid the Torah says Zachrinu Lichayim, because Lachayim would imply not life. The Bach asks, what do you mean? It says Lachayim Birushalayim. By the way, just for your Yediyah, Reb Chaim Falaji wrote a parish on Yushalmi called L'chaim B'Yerushalayim. Anyway, so the question is, it says L'chaim B'Yerushalayim. Okay, and it turns out we're more makbid during Yom Naram because we have to be more mendaktik because the satana will be makatrik. So somebody sent me a beautiful Dvar Torah on this. I just want to start to share with this. It says that on Rosh Hashanah there are 3 books that are open, but we don't know exactly what does it say in these 3 books. So it's suggested in the book of the Tzadikim it says Lichayim. In the book of the Rishaim it says Lachayim. And in the Beinonim there are no Nekudas yet. The Nekuda is awaiting Yom Kippurim. And this is Merumas in the Slichais that we say. It says Shloisha Sfarim Niftachim Menukadim. That's the Lashon. 3 books that are open that are Menukad. And it's suggested, the reason we say Elaka de Meir Anini is because Rabbi Meir holds we don't say Meklal Avat Hashmehen. Rabbi Meir holds there's no difference between a Shva and a Patach. So therefore we daven, Hashem answer us according to Rabbi Meir that even if it says Lachayim, consider it, Rabbi Meir holds it doesn't matter. It could still be read L'chaim. Okay. So the Gemara on Yud Aleph Amud Beis had brought the shaila of Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama wanted to know if somebody says that this piece of meat should be like zivchei shlamim after the sprinkling of the blood. We know that zivchei shlamim is davar hanadar, but after the zrikas hadam, it becomes mutter. So the Gemara says if you said explicitly it should be like the carbon shlamim after the zrikas hadam, then of course it's mutter, because right now you're being matfisid in something which is heter. Rather, the case is you have a piece of shlamim in front of you and a piece of regular meat, and you say zeh kazeh. Do you mean that the meat that I want to eat fundamentally should be like the meat of shlamim fundamentally, which is davar hanador, or the way it is now, which is permitted? The Ran points out that even if you mean the way it is right now, it's still asur lizarim or to Tameim. In other words, to a Tameh you can't eat the basar shlamim, and the chaz of a shoik is asar to zarim. So the Ran points out those isurim, because they're not to everyone, they're not an isur of davar hanadur, they're an isur of davar ha'asar. This is one of the fundamental principles in Nedarim, that if you want to use the process of hatfasa, which means to extend something which is already prohibited to the item that you want to make a vow on, it's only if the item that you extended from is asr through a neder, not an isser from the Torah. Okay, so now, here we begin. Amar Rava, Tashma, come in here. Noisar upigol. One of the cases mentioned in the Mishnah on Yud Amud Beis is if you say that you want your meat to be like noisar and pigol. Let's think about what noisar is. So you shecht an animal, you sprinkle the blood, it became mutter, and now it's left over. So now it's asr. Let's think about that isr. That isr is davar ha-asr, not davar ha-nadar. Okay? It's a Torah stamped isr. And the halach is you can make a neder off of that. You could do hatfasa off of that. Why could you do hatfasa off of that? But right now, it's after the zrikas hadam. V'hanoisar upigol la'achar zrikas damimhu. And after the zrikas hadam, it becomes mutter. Elamai the isr noisar. The isr noisar is not nederable because it's a davar ha'asur, and yet it's effective. It must be because bi'ikara humatvis. What you intend is the original isser of davar hanadar of the carbon in its original state. So we see that when you make a neder, your intention is that it should be effective on the davar on its original state. The Ran points out that there are those who are not goyres pigol. even though this is not one of the recommended Rans, well, I recommend it, okay? So it's Ran Divrei Hamaschel v'hanoiser upigol achas rikas damahu. Istoloi garsi pigol. There are those who take out the word pigol. Why? Because think about it. What is pigol? Pigol is a carbon that you had the improper kavanah at the time of shchita. So therefore, even after you sprinkle the blood, the sprinkling of the blood never matters it. So actually, pigol remains in its isser of davar hanador for all time. So pigol proves nothing. Pigol is forever a davar hanador. It doesn't prove me'ikare hu matfis because it remains in its status of davar hanador the entire time. So therefore, we'll take out pigol. So the question is, but from Noisar we see Bi'ikare hu matfis. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rav Huna Breid Rav Nasan. Rav Huna Breid Rav Nasan says, B'Noisar shel oila. Rav Huna Breid Rav Nasan says, you know what kind of Noisar we're talking about? We're talking about the Noisar of a carbon oila that never became mutter by the Zrikas Hadam. The Zrikas Hadam never mattered it, so it remains in its status of Davar Hanador for good. Look at the Ran. The Ran says, B'noisar shel oila, da afilu timtza loimer. Even if you're going to say, dibidahashta kamatfis, that you're not being matfis from its essence, from its ikar, but even if you're being matfis from now, akate nidre loipaka, the neder did not vanish. Daha oila asura afil achazrika, carbon oila is asur even after you sprinkle the blood. So we're talking about the noisar of a carbon oila. The noisar of a carbon oila remains in its status of being an oila from the beginning, and therefore it never leaves. So you can prove B'ikare kamatfis because it's still even now in its status of davar hanadar. So Gemara says, well, if that's the case, then of what significance is it noisar? Why do you have to say it's noisar? Just say it's the basar of an oila. Amar lei. So Rava said to Rav Huna Breid Rav Nasan, Im kain lisni b'basar oila. If so, just teach the basar of an oila. Bishlama, the Ran says, if we're not talking about an oila, we're talking about noisar. The reason we're talking about noisar is to tell me the chiddush b'ikare kamatfis. But now that we're talking about an oila, then why do I need noisar? Look at the Ran. Im kain lisni b'basar oila. I amr b'shama delaba oila. If we're not talking about an oila, it's very good. Not got noisar. It's teaching noisar lashmeina debi kamatfis, that you're matfisit in its essential state. Ela I amr to oila ma'ilif. We're going to say we're talking about an oila. My rabuse de noisar. What's the chiddush that it's noisar? Akati nidrei loy paka. The neder has not vanished. Says the Gemara, no, it's a chiddush that we're talking about noisar. Because you might think that when he's matfisit, he's being matfisit in the isser noisar, not in its state of it being an oila. And the isser noisar is a davar ha'asur, not a davar ha'nadar. The chiddush is, even though it's noisar, you're not being matfis the isser noisar, you're being matfis the isser neder of oila. Says the Gemara, noisar upigol. One second, right? The Gemara asks, Amraleim can listening b'basar oila loy mi boy kamer. That goes without saying. Loy mi boy basar oila the asur. It goes without saying that the meat of an oila you can make a neder off. A double carbon kamatfis. You're being matfis in the isser carbon. Noisar upigol the oila it's stricha. The noisar and pigol of a carbon oila we need. Sakadai techamina. I would have thought be'isser noisar, then the isser of noisar. Ki-isser pigol. I'm sorry, Sakadai Techamin, I would have thought ki-isser noisar, or ki-isser pigol. That you're being matfisid from, you want it to be, you want your permitted meat to be like the isser noisar, like the isser pigol. Ba'abalei kematfis b'davar asar, and you're being matfisid in a davar ha'asar. V'loi mitzar, and it's not asar. Kamash malan, no, that the hatfasa is working from the isser of the oila. Kamash malan. Okay. Meisvei. We'll ask a question. Now the truth is, what do you mean we'll ask a question? We didn't come to any type of conclusion whatsoever regarding whether we say bi'ikare kamatfis or not. So this is not really a question. This is more like, come in here, right? Let's bring a proof to one of the tzadim. And this, in fact, the Rishonim say is a raya that Lashon Nedarim Shani, that there's a different type of terminology used in Masechta Nedarim, because why should it be a meisvei? So it's not a classic meisvei. Eizehu Isser Ha'amar B'Torah. What is an example of a neder, of a terminology of neder that's effective midaraisa? Amar, if a guy says, Harini shaloi oichal basar, behold, I will not eat meat. Now there's a big discussion here, because we're talking about neder, and this is not the classic lashon of neder. Then I'm not going to eat meat, that's a lashon of Shavua. Isser neder is basar zeh asar alai, right? So, is it lav dafka? Or even if you say in a lashon shua, maybe it's at least a yad for nedarim. But harini shaloi oichal basar. Behold, I'm not going to eat meat. V'shaloi eshtei yain. I'm not going to drink wine. Ki yom shemes by aviv. Like the day that one's father passed away. That's what he says. Ki yom shemes by rabbi. Like the day his rebbe passed away. Ki yom shenarag by Gedaliah ben Achikam. Like the day Gedaliah was murdered. Ki yom shara'isi Yerushalayim b'chorbana. Like the day that Yerushalayim was, that I saw Yerushalayim in its devastation. So this guy is taking an eder that the meat, he's not going to eat meat or wine like the day his father died. Now on the day a person's father died, there is basis that one should fast on the day of the patiro of one's parent, which some say, where does a tikkun come from? See, they used to fast, and then they couldn't fast, so they used to make a siyum with schnapps. And then they couldn't make a siyum, but they were able to still have schnapps. That they were able to do. So that's where the tikkun comes from. Anyway, people need a tikkun from just doing a tikkun. But this Gemara is the source for the halacha of a tainus b'yom shemes by aviv, yom shemes by rabbi possibly, or ki yom shenarag by Gedaliah ben Achikam. Now that's a question, what do you mean? The yom shenarag Gedaliah ben Achikam was not an isser neder, it was asur, it's a tainus sibor. So what exactly is this case? V'amar Shmuel said, in all these cases, it had to be that the very first time that these occurrences happened, you made a neder. V'hu shenadar b'oisayim. You made a neder on that day. On the day the father died, on the day the Rebbe died, on the day of Tzom Gedaliah, on the day you saw Yerushalayim b'chorbana, you made a neder. And now we're talking about a couple years later. And since then, you did not refrain from wine and meat on that particular day. And then the day came and you basically said, today like this day. Meaning, it's now the anniversary of that day. So it's now, the father died on the first Sunday in Iyar, and now again it's the first Sunday in Iyar. The Rebbe died, or now it's the 3rd of Tishrei. And you said, today should be like that fateful day. But that fateful day had come many times since, and it wasn't usher. And yet this is an effective neder. So what do we see from here? When you make a neder, bi'ikara, ikamatfis. You're matfis in the original day. So the Rishonim ask, what do you mean? But before the father died, that day wasn't usher. So if it's bi'ikara, ikamatfis, it should be mutter. No. Before the father dies, that day didn't exist in a significant sense. So the first time it existed was that first time that the occurrence happened that you made a neder. So what did Shmuel say? Amar Shmuel. I'm sorry, what?
It's not referring to the date. He's referring to that day. There's no raya from there. He's saying that day, the day that his father died, the day that he saw your son the Korbanah.
No, it's talking about... No, we're talking about where on that date he made a neder. And now, years later, on the anniversary of that date, you say this day should be Ki Yom Shemes B'Aviv. Now, Yom Shemes B'Aviv has happened many times since then. So which Yom Shemes B'Aviv?
It only happened once. Not true. It only happened once.
Ah.
Yom Shemes B'Aviv happened once.
Okay, good. So you're saying you want to be a stickler. You said the day the father died, he only died once. So the Ran says, good. The Ran says you didn't explicitly say Yom Shemes B'Aviv. You said it should be like the first Sunday of Nisan, which happens to be the anniversary of Yom Shemeis B'Yavim. So which first Sunday of Nisan are you referring to? That's going to be the question, okay? Good point. You made a neder on that first. We're talking about where you're currently standing on that first Sunday, the Mispeh that the father died. Some Rishonim say it's lav dafka, that it's right now on that date. It could be 2 days before also. But the lashon of the Gemara is you're on that date. Even though there have been since many Sundays of heter, ukatani aser we see, and yet we teach it's aser. Shma mina beikar hu matfes. From here we see that when you're matfes in the essence of the day. So that's a kasha. We see it's not a kasha; it's a raya. Beikare kamatfes. Look in the Ran. Divrei Hamaschal, the first medium-sized wide line, v'hu shenadar ba'oisayim. Kasal kedaitach, in the Havamina we think, shenadar ba'oisayim shemeisav, that you made a neder on that day that the father died. Shalo yoichal basar, that you're not going to eat meat. V'chi nadar pam achas, shalo yoichal basar b'yom shemeis b'gedaya. Or likewise, you made a neder one time that you're not going to eat meat on Tzom Gedalia. V'achshav matfis yoim acher ka'oisayim, and now you're being matfis a different anniversary of that date, like that day. Dikivan denadar b'meikara, since you're matfis in the essence of the day, havalei hashta matfis b'davar hanadar. Since you made a neder originally, so your neder now is hatfasa b'davar hanadur v'loy b'davar ha'asar, because when you're menader like the day Shemeis by Gedalia, it had to be that on Tzom Gedalia you once made a neder that you're not going to eat meat. And now when you're answering Tzom Gedalia, you're not answering it. Now that's very interesting, because if it's Tzom Gedalia now, is the neder even chal? It's already, you're now to eat meat. You can't eat anything. Maybe after the fast. I mean, that would be mashma like the Rishonim who say you don't have to, it doesn't have to be on that calendar. It could be a random day in the year.
It could be at night, the night before.
Let's see the Ran. Dekoi bechad b'shabas demisbei avua. Nira be'inai dahachi perusha. It would seem that this is the explanation. Sha'omer b'yoim echad b'shabas. That you say on Sunday, Shu b'yoim shemeis b'yavev, which is the day the father died, Laminyan Chadashim, based on the count of the months, Kugain. Echad b'Shabbos Rishon Shal Nisan, the first Sunday of Nisan. Yeheyoim ze alai, this first Sunday of Nisan should be upon me, Kiyoim Echad b'Shabbos Rishon Shal Nisan, like that other first Sunday of Nisan, which the father died. Va'af agav the ikar tuva chad b'Shabbos te'atera, even though there have been many first Sundays in Nisan that were permitted. Uktani asar, and it teaches it's asar. Ushma mina bi'ikarei kamadfes. So we see that when you make a neder, the intent is it should be like the original state of the day. Umashma leila shas, it is mashma to shas the bahachi askinan, that's what we're talking about. Because if, like Mendy pointed out, if you say explicitly, this day should be like the day the father died, then of course bi'ikare kamadfes, that's what he's saying. Pshita de mitzar. Elavadai, it must be, ba'omer, yoim ze alai, this day should be upon me, ke'echad b'Shabbos Rishon Shel Nisan. This day should be like the last, another time, the first Sunday of Nisan. V'kamashmal on the Chiddush. Daf agav the ikol ameimer beheter kamadfes, that even though you could say you're madfes beheter, kivan shu oimed ba'oisa yom shu lamin chadashim, since you're standing on that day, which by the count of the month is the same type of day, it's the first Sunday of Nisan, ki yom shemeis ba'aviv, umadfes va'amar yehe yom zeh ke'echad b'Shabbos be'ikarei madfes va'asar. So Taraya bi'ikarei kamadfes. So the Gemara says, no, you misunderstood Shmuel. When Shmuel said you made a neder on that first time, it means you made a neder on that first time since that first time. Every single year you aser the first Sunday of Nisan, Kiyam Shemes by Aviv, Kiyam Shemes by Rabbi, Kiyam Shenera Gedai Ben Achikam. You don't have a raya, B'Ikare Kamatfis, because you've been making a neder on that calendar date ever since it happened. So you have no raya, B'Ikare Kamatfis, even though there have been many times and opportunities of heter on that date. There have not been any opportunities of heter. Every single year annually, so far, you made a neder to aser. So when you say now in year 10, Yom Zeh, Yom Rishon, L'Shabbos, B'Chodesh Nisan, well, all you have is days of the first Sunday of Nisan that have been aser since. The Gemara says, the Shmuel Hachi Yemar, Amar Shmuel, Shmuel said, "V'hu shenadur uba me'oisay yom ha'ilach," where you made a neder from that day and on. Says the Ran, "Umashani de Shmuel hachi yemar, Amar Shmuel v'hu shenadur uba me'oisay yom ha'ilach kalaymar shekol yemei echad b'Shabbos she'avru alav." Every first Sunday that has passed, she'en kiyom shemes be'aviv nesru alav b'neder. It's been usher in a neder. V'kivan shekain, since that is so leimatzis lemigmar mehacha haidina. You're not able to learn from here the din of Be'ikare Kamadfis, V'loimar dahach rabusa ashmeinan, and to say that this chiddush is teaching that hacha leka yomi dehater klal. There has not been any days of heter at all. Okay, next proof. We'll only do part of this. Amar Ravina, Tashma. If someone says kechalas arayin, like the chala of arayin. What is the chala of arayin? Isser chala. When you bake chala, you mafresh a portion, it goes to a kohen. It's the chala of arayin. Friends, is that davar hanadur or davar ha'asur? Well, the way it's chal is through your amira. So you would think it's a davar hanadur. It's not, it's davar asur. Because it's only asur to a zar, it's not asur to kohanim. Anything that's not asur to everybody is a davar ha'asur. So you say, well, how did I trigger it? Very simply, by my amira, it accesses the Isser Torah. So chala is not is davar hanadur, it's davar ha'asur. Even though, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, nope, I'm not sure. Okay. Or uketrumasay, or truma, which also is not davar hanador. It's chal through your amira. It's chal through your amira. However, once you say the isser truma is only to zarim, not to kohanim, so that's a davar ha'asar. So kechalas aroin, if somebody says I want to aser an item like the chala or like truma, mutter. But that implies hakid trumas lachmei toida. But like the truma of the lachmei toida, we know the lachmei toida comes with 40 loaves, 10 of 4 different types. You give one of each type to a kohen, and that is davar hanadar. That's from kachim. But if you want to be matfis and lachmei toida asar, it's asar. But the thing is, it's talking about after the zrikas hadam, and after the zrikas hadam, the trumas lachmei toida become mutter. So it's a raya b'ikare kamadfis. Says Gemara, v'had shumas lachmei toida la'achar zrikas damami. It's after the sprinkling of the blood. So the Gemara will have to revamp that case. Let's see the 2 bottom lines of the Ran. Kechalas aroin ukchumasay mutter. The afagav the bekriya shem mitzuri. Even though, why is it mutter? It becomes asur through your amira. Kivan she'enoi asur lakal, the fact that it's not asur to everyone, davar ha'asur mikri, it's called davar asur, v'loi davar hanadar. Ha kitrumas lachmei toida, but like the truma of the lachmei toida, chala achas, one chala she noitel mikol eser chalas, they take from all 10 chalos, shall call min shaba, of each species, asur. It's asur, why? Dahavale matfis b'davar hanadar, because you're being matfis in davar hanador and not davar ha'asor. Okay, we'll hold it over here. And Bezos Hashem, tomorrow, Yud Beis, Amud Beis. Everyone should have, you should all go, Hoylech, Leh, li shine, not hoilech la li shine. Okay? Have a good night.